Hello there. Today I will be discussing 7 key principles to success. These principles look at the reality of our current society in such ways that impact our personality, whether they come from society, family and friends, or our content consumption. 1. Principles. A principle is a recurring theme that argues for truth and integrity about a belief or law. Consistency is key and needs to be seen in the majority of events to be seen as reliable as it impacts our understanding of communication systems. A degree of understanding is crucial for confident human decision-making, whether that be interaction with the natural world, interaction with animals, or interaction with other human beings. 2. Moral principle and political laws. A moral principle cannot hold strength within political laws. This is why the adage for the golden rule, do as you would be done by, is unfair. For instance, in a cross-benefit analysis conducted by 2 people, there is person A who values money and is willing to compromise a few extra hours out of their personal life compared to person B. If both people are working in a teams and person A, who is a team leader, decides on behalf of the team that everyone should take up extra hours to increase productivity, then person B, whether expressed or not, will be opposed to the decision. In a more critical example, a human being with a victim temperament, naturally in a position of power such as a police officer, judge, doctor, or lawyer etc., may have an inclination towards projecting their philosophical beliefs, which has the possibility to lead to potential life-altering decisions based from past experience. In a similar fashion, the cognitive decision to offer charity while expectant of a reciprocal thank you or acknowledgement follows the same misunderstanding of the nature of decision-making and choice. This helps to understand the rationale behind political laws that are proposed by the government, whose sole aims is to form a productive society and address complex sensitive issues. Government-based political laws in the most purest forms are supposedly representative of the country's constitutions, but as external pressures and interests center into government, the purity can become misrepresented. Hereby the rationale behind religious efficacy enters into decision-making on behalf of the country's political regime. It is therefore crucial that interpretation of religious text are seen more as figurative rather than literal in most cases, but with room for debate on the plausibility and integrity of the scripture in question. In contrast, analytical discussion without censorship from a variety of communities as well as new ideas should be representative of the people and the country's needs. Improper education can lead to improper needs, and the government needs to focus on the business of the direct health requirements of its citizens rather than uninformed temporary stimulus that plagues most of capitalistic artificial growth. 3. Scientific principle. The scientific method was a reactionary creation, though fear of inaccuracy first fashioned by Ibn al-Haytham. The need for accuracy was pressed via his need for survival. The outcome of this is a reactive understanding of the universe around us rather than a proactive desire, as can be somewhat seen in today's modern science, but replacing fear with profit. Of course, there is restrictions to the level of scientific research that can take place today which regard today's morality and our surrounding environment. Crucially, if we are to see proactive results in our lives, we need to take the scientific model and transfer it to the imbalances within our daily activities. This sets up a logical parameter and guideline for fulfilling our goals and allows us to prevent or capitalize on our results. Over time we may use our past understanding to create a proactive goal, though analysis of our results by initiating milestones as rewards towards our goals. Once stagnation becomes more and more frequent, it is then time to compare results of past and present so that we can adopt differing philosophies to reach our objectives. Whatever objectives we place value towards enables us to create relations within the environment. This means that if we want to specify our objective, we need to create the hypothetical result first. Within the natural world this occurs through mathematical theorems, but more practically this in our day-to-day thoughts as quantifiable units of measurement, envisioning and rational logical thinking. 4. Personal principles. Oftentimes our principles are shaped by families and environmental factors such as our society and the general social conditioning that is placed onto us. This can lead to a variety of morals and ethical principles that an individual sets as a theme across their lives. For those of us who are determined to live consciously and free from the constraints of social pressure, we take a step back and meditate on the values within our lives to evaluate what we see as acceptable or not. It takes a great deal of courage to question why the world works the way it does and why we act the way we do. Striving to rise from mediocrity has to be a state of the mind, and if you want to end poverty within your life, you have to end it within yourself first. There has been since the dawn of man a desire within every single human to set up and face the world not knowing what there is out there and act in spite of that to aspire to a higher paradigm. More often than not, this part of curiosity for life dwindles after a while and dies, perhaps somewhere along our childhoods, sometimes within teenage years, adolescence, and adulthood, and even into our senior years. But at some point, if our ancestors did not act in the face of adversity, then we would never have the facial structure, hair or eye color, height, intelligence or creativity, as well as the advantages it poses towards survival we have today in recent human history. It is not something special they did or extraordinary, but simple action towards a goal, whether attainable or not, achievable or hypothetical, and realistic or implausible. The impossible seems that way until it becomes achieved. The setbacks we experience in our lives leads to the creation of philosophies, a time of reflection to understand, rationalize and perceive where our actions take us. The personal principles of the individual should respect and honor the individual. This means external influences are to come second before the needs of any said person. This is because you are the first and last person you will meet throughout your lifetime, as well understanding that you will always have needs. Whether or not you choose to fulfill them is up to you. This truth will stand the test of time, so I would suggest going after them. A personal principle will become the strength of your self-esteem, the passion of your path to mastery, the attraction of your followers, the desire to achieve. Universal principles of success include self-discipline, patience, active focus, grit, action and compassion. It will help you evaluate the level of conscious risk you take in your work and rationalize not only your thought process but what you choose to create. A personal principle will always start with one word: value. So what is it that you value? But more importantly, why? 5. Individual versus collective. Within a society that values order and structure, there is less change towards individual representation and more of an external push towards structure and standardization, but with good reason. If there were no structure and standardization, we would have no reference towards a baseline, meaning etiquette such as queuing up, cars driving on roads, and pedestrian pathways would be thrown out the window. But this does, however, means a philosophy surrounding following rules is created and actually less flexibility on how an individual can act within society. Given this fact, we should be critical of both sides and be flexible to retain the benefits. We should come to terms with the fact that we can never fully satisfy the individual and collective at the same time. We must always find middle ground or shared values that create principles that seize benefits in the short and long term. By doing this, we allow the flow of information from big data statistics to represent a society that are getting their need met and supporting a growing economy. Critically, we must answer how this ideal translates to cultures, economies and countries external to it. Texas, London and the Silicon Valley are a great leading example of how development should represent the country, culture or industry. 6. Society conditions and objective analysis. The condition that society sets out to the individual is derived from the need to retain profit in the most direct sense. This means even when there has been processes set in place for a lifestyle that encompass the individual, it typically favors the individual less over the society. This is certainly fine for objective personalities who understand the consequences of their actions going into their desired establishments, but in the digital age of bite-sized condensed information, everyone is seeking to maximize their benefits over productivity or effort, as there is a great deal of entitlement. Simply put, people are less satisfied with the accomplishments of engineering a grand building, mastering a highly detailed oil painting, or composing an orchestral symphony, and why would they care? They have Spotify. But rectifying a higher ideal should not be seen as enforced, as this would be a constraint and likely be met with resistance from the public's view by passionate debate and justice that our forefathers fought for. Instead, an organic acknowledgement of current public affairs and meriting where precedence is due will likely uphold a high moral regard and screen out any potential hypocrisy. How we organize this ideal has been at the forefront of every religious and political leader, philosopher, guru, scientist and inventors alike. It is to understand that this is an evolving process as much as we are, as much life surrounding us and as much there is to see in the universe. But this acknowledgement, this merit to awareness, gives us the opportunity to understand the world around us and, much more importantly, our impact on it. The growth of potentially infinite information passing from one system to another, and the principle of life revolves around a universal truth where like attracts like and life goes where life is. The same principle can also be said for money. 7. Nature of principles. A principle abides by certainty within a confidence interval. The increased likelihood of an occurrence within the bands of any given principle speaks to the nature and strength of that principle. An effective principle can therefore be transferred into a multitude of disciplines. The principle acts as a symbol referring to action only as a representation. As with any important symbol, the idea is that the symbol is not important in and of itself, but rather what it signifies, since the interpretation has the power to influence people's minds. A mixture of general guidelines, universal principles, refined designs, adaptive behavior and the law of cause and effect greatly impacts the effectiveness of one's ability to apply our principles, but more importantly understand it in the first place. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more content and like to show some support. But more importantly, please make sure to think about what we have just now discussed and apply the principles into your life.